Welcome to the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law, and I'm joined today by my partner Jim Wazak from Success Enhancement. And our guest today is Bill Chu from Wintrust Mortgage. And today we're going to talk about asking the right questions of your client or customer. So thanks for being here with us today, Bill.
Thank you, Kevin.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. In terms of my business, I'm a mortgage broker with Wintrust Mortgage here locally in the western suburbs. I've been in my business for more than a decade. A common question I get from either clients and or business partners is, well, what is your specialty? What is your niche? And my niche, as I look back at my 10 years of producing in this business, really is to help clients, especially ones with complicated financials, to finance whether it be their first home purchase or their ongoing home purchases.
So if you come across someone who isn't a picture perfect candidate for a loan at first blush, you can work with them to get their financials in order and try to get them qualified for something. Is that basically what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually my process starts with a conversation to better understand what is the client trying to achieve as part of the home purchase, and along the way, of course, trying to understand the client's household financials. So whether they work for a company as an employee or someone like yourself who owns a business and have been, and that kind of stuff.
Well, the topic that you brought up today, asking the right questions of your client or your customer, is really interesting because I know a lot of times there's probably situations where I've had clients with needs entirely different from what they came in to talk to me about.
Correct.
That if I had gone through a checklist of making sure I completely understood their situation, I might have been able to service them in other ways. So what are the sort of questions you ask, or what's your process for even knowing what questions to ask?
Usually the conversation starts with a client either doing one of two things. They're either calling to get a quote or they're calling to share with me, Bill, I'm referred to you, I need a mortgage.
Okay.
Then my questions and my process begins. Usually I start with, well, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Along the way, of course, my goal is to better understand their current financial situation. So there will be some questions that I ask, such as, well, do you work for a company? What do you do? Or do you own a business? And along that topic, how long? And by the way, how do you pay yourself? In terms of the other aspects of other questions that I ask, some of them are very straightforward, such as, are you buying a home to live in or are you buying it to rent out? Because that makes a big difference in my world.
So other than just making sure that you get a loan that's the right fit for them, what are some of the positives to having a good set of questions prepared?
The positives of asking the right questions and having a good set of questions to ask. Don't get me wrong, there are times that you can't ask all of these questions in the first conversation. It may be an ongoing conversation. But the positive for myself as a mortgage professional and for the client is really that of, we make sure that their loan scenario, therefore their loan application, meets the loan that they need. Why is that important today? It's important today, Kevin and Jim, because 1 out of 3 potential home buyers, as they're trying to secure financing for their home purchase, get denied for a loan. It's never they get denied up front. Sometimes they get denied after spending money through home inspection, they've arranged movers, et cetera, and at the 11th hour, the lender that they started something with pulls the rug from under them. the reasons are enormous.
So how can the principle of asking the right questions be applied to businesses other than mortgage lenders? Because we don't have an audience of purely mortgage lenders. We got a bunch of broad business owner base. So how would you talk to your non-mortgage lender friends and say, this is what I do, here's how you can apply it to your own business?
Sure. Absolutely. I fully agree with you. My business is just one small sliver of what makes the economy go round and round. I think along this topic of asking the right questions, having the right questions to ask, it's so very important. I think in a lot of businesses, the more complicated the product or the service, the bigger ticket item the product or service is, it's important to ask the right questions because two things. By asking the right questions, you're qualifying the opportunity, you're qualifying whether you provide the solution the client's looking for. And third, let's not forget, by asking enough of the right questions, you're in a much better position to propose the right solution for the client.
Well, you know what, maybe we should do a little role play. How about if I'm trying to sell you marketing services, and I'll ask you some questions, and then you sort of debrief on whether or not I asked the right questions.
Okay, so I'm the buyer,
you're the buyer, I'm the seller. How's
Okay,
that?
sure.
So Bill, how you doing? I'm Jim.
Jim, I'm Bill.
Yeah. So I understand you're trying to grow your business.
Yes.
So what kinds of things have you tried in the past, and what's worked and what's not worked?
We've tried, for example, like many other small businesses, outsourcing various non-core focus areas of our business. Why? Because hey, let someone else do what they do great to support us as a supplier of a product or service.
Okay, and how's that worked for you?
There are times it's worked well, and there are times where it's just complete nightmare.
Okay, so do you have a specific goal in terms of the amount of business you're hoping to write this year?
In terms of any business, I think, when you're sitting down, writing a business plan for the next upcoming year, of course, what you're trying to do is grow revenue, right? Either grow revenue or save money.
So do you think you're on track for that plan?
Yes.
Good. Now, to go even beyond that plan, do you think you need more chances to quote, or do you need to be better at the sales process once you have somebody already interested?
In terms of driving revenue,
yeah,
of course, more chances to quote.
Okay, so you're pretty comfortable with your sales process?
Yes.
Okay. So have you considered having guys like Kevin and I come in front of your office in gorilla suits with a sign, "Get your mortgage here"?
Now that you ask, I've considered it.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I've considered it.
Okay. And what held you back from buying such an obviously great service?
While that gorilla suit concept is certainly a unique idea, the one thing I know about my business is that that's not always how someone starts a conversation to try to secure financing.
I see. Okay. All right, so end of role play. So how'd I do, Bill? I mean, how would you critique my question asking?
You asked all the right questions.
Really?
Trying to qualify, is there an opportunity? And trying to qualify what you bring to the table fits what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know what you did there, Jim, that was important is you weren't so concerned on what you were selling. You were trying to figure out what Bill, the customer, needed, wanted, was looking for, what had failed in the past. And so you weren't going to try to sell them, some outsourced stuff that didn't work. That was a complete nightmare before.
Well, you know what? Somebody told me once, who's actually a pretty sharp marketing guy, is the way you really show your expertise to a prospect is not by what you say, but by what you ask.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge thing. And as an example, if if I took my car in to be repaired, and I said something like, it's hard to start. And if the mechanic could say, we could do a tune-up, or, we could change the oil or whatever. But better would be for him to ask more qualifying questions. Like, does that happen mostly in the morning when it's cold? Did you notice that your fuel economy is worse? And then here's, yeah, and then you feel like the guy, really understands you.
Right.
So, asking the right questions is the best way, really, to demonstrate your expertise.
Yeah. And a lot of the times along this topic, Kevin and Jim, when I do speak with clients to help them understand a little bit more of what I do and why I'm asking questions, I use the example of when each of us goes to see our physician or a specialist to do what? To solve a problem.
Correct.
Here's what we all know. Every physician that has a white lab coat embroidered on the coat MD, they are absolutely, by all means, a physician. But the reality is, in that respect, with each of us, we're looking for the right one that has the right chemistry with us, that asks all of the right questions.
Yeah. Kevin, I think this would come up a lot in the legal business, where a person would come in and say, I want to do this. And they might, A, not really understanding their own problem, or B, misapplying a solution they've seen work in some different circumstances. Do you see
that? Happens in estate planning all the time. Okay. Everyone comes to me and says, I need a will. But, Bill, being in real estate, you probably know that most people who own real estate really need a trust. So everyone who comes to me says, I need a will. And that might be a client right now.
Our show is working. The phone is ringing off the hook.
But most people who come and say, I need a will, they walk out after being educated, deciding that they need a trust. But I can't even have the conversation about what a trust is and what it does until I've let them talk first about what their situation is. Even if I know them walking in, I could ask them 3 questions. Do you own real estate? Do you have kids? And I could know most of the things that I need to know to say, all right, here's what you need. But no one's going to be listening to me until they've had a chance to say their piece. They come in wanting to tell their story, and until they've told me what they need to tell me, they're going to be more thinking about what they have to say rather than listening to what I'm trying to educate them on. So I have a pretty simple process, and when I'm meeting with an estate planning client, and this is the most transactional part of my business, it's, find out what their goals are, who are they trying to take care of, what would they like to happen, what's their financial situation, just like Bill was talking about, and only then, once I've got it all mapped out, then I can educate them in a more specific, tailored way, rather than just saying, this is what trusts do, but this is how a trust could help you in your particular situation.
Since you bring up the example of wills and trusts, I just want to make a statement that I've seen this happen from time to time, but there's a lot of young people who will feel, I don't need a will, I don't really have any assets yet or anything. But one thing you don't realize is if you have children, you should definitely have a will, because one of the things you could specify in the will, if both of you should decease unexpectedly, you can specify who's going to take care of those kids, which could be an important reason to get a will, even if you don't have a lot of money.
Absolutely. And I think in the world that we live in today, where the whole concept of modern family, blended families is becoming more of the norm, and as a result of that, as it touches my business, that type of modern family with their complexity also means there's some financial complexity, right? So by asking enough and all of the right questions, and sometimes the question to ask as it relates to Kevin's business is sort of asking, well, why do you think you need a will or trust?
So in preparing these questions, I've seen 2 ways of doing it in my experience, and they're both good in different circumstances. Some financial advisors I've worked with in the past will just have a checklist, like when you take your car to the mechanic, they've got the checklist they go through, and they ask what's your estate plan situation, do you have a will or trust, what are your goals, and they work through basically a worksheet.
Right.
I'm a little different. I basically know I've got 4 or 5 points I know I have to hit, but how I get to those points is much more conversational and meandering, and I don't really have a prepared checklist. And in some legal matters, a checklist, I'd probably be better served to have a checklist. How do you guys prepare the questions that you're going to ask a potential client? Is it something that's, I know I need to hit all these points, or is it just more of a conversational thing like Jim was doing with you a second ago, Bill?
Sure. I think to that question, Kevin, I'm probably a lot more like you. The questions that I ask in either the very first conversation or a second conversation, maybe in-person meeting, I do it in the context of having a conversation. And one of the things that I found to be a whole lot more productive for myself and the client in question is setting expectations up front for each conversation. Meaning, example, if I'm meeting John Doe today, I will have communicated to John Doe, today, John, I've time blocked 45 minutes for our first conversation. My goal is to understand a little bit more about you, ask some questions along the way, and also give you time to ask some questions of me. So by setting that expectation, immediately we start the process. There are certain questions that I'm going to feel listening, responding to John Doe as to what I need to ask. The questions that I don't have an opportunity to ask in this first conversation, of course, then our goal is to set up another meeting.
Well, I just make a comment that, and obviously there's all different situations, but I think the notion of a conversational discussion is way better. And the reason I say that is another expression I heard somewhere along the line, and I think this is really important, is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
And if you can, through asking questions, show that you're sincere and you really want to do the right thing for them, then they're usually more willing to open up to you, as well as more likely to hire you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in almost every business, law, financial services, complicated IT services, or even businesses that are just purely transactional, retail. The one common thread I think that cuts across all of those industries is this. Clients want to do business with someone that they like, right? Can get to know and feel comfortable with. And if you're just working off of a checklist, you've got your sort of head down saying, oh, fill this out, I'll come back in 10 minutes.
Right.
You're not going to get the warm and fuzzies from a client and vice versa.
Right. And you know what? There's a tool that people should maybe consider. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but it's called the DISC personality profile, and it teaches you about the different styles of communication that different people have. And you may have some people that are too conversational, you want to rein them back in. Some people are more detail-minded, some people are more focused on the relationship. So as a tool to help you ask the right questions, I would certainly recommend looking at the DISC profile.
Absolutely. I think it's a very useful tool.
I think in talking about the difference between a checklist and just a conversation, I think really, at least from my perspective in my industry, the best way to go is to have, prepare a checklist for yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Don't do it in front of the client, but if you do enough of these, you know what you've got to go through and the points you've got to hit. But if you can hit those points in a conversational way and make sure you're not missing anything key. When I was first starting out, there were a lot of consultations that I was, after the fact, I was like, man, I wish I'd asked about this sort of thing or that sort of thing. And not that it impacted that particular service, but again, cross-selling, finding out what their other needs are, finding out if I can possibly refer them to someone, like you, Bill. In both of our industries, referrals are important. And unless you ask, hey, do you have an accountant? Do you have a financial advisor? Do you have a mortgage guy? You're not going to find that out. And that's got to be something that's internalized. And maybe it makes sense to, if you're new at whatever you're doing, meeting with a client, maybe come up with a list for yourself, review it a little bit, do the pre-meeting prep, and that list doesn't necessarily have to change. You just have to, make sure that you hit it.
Absolutely.
And you make a good point, Kevin, because if you're in a business where you get a lot of your business through referrals or through networking, that's another environment where asking great questions can help. Usually if I meet somebody at a networking function, I usually say, what are you up to? What are you trying to do? How can I help you? Before I talk anything about what I might be doing or looking for. So,
very true.
Well, Bill, thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
How can people reach you if they'd like to get a mortgage?
People can reach me in two ways. My phone number is 708-203-2258, or visit my website, Choose Your Lender, CHUS, yourlender.com.
Jim, how can people reach you?
They can reach me at 630-272-3895. And also let me add, if you know of people who you think would be great guests for us, we're always looking for interesting people, and you could call me with that information as well. And Kevin?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. We do free consultations at 630-324-6666. We practice almost every area of law. And you can see more podcasts and video blogs. And now we're doing transcripts for these podcasts. So if you want to read them, you can go to seizeyourbusiness.com. And you can also check out learn-about-law.com if you want to learn more about the legal aspects of being a business owner. So thanks so much for your time, Bill.
Thank you.